NFL free agency is upon us, so I'm bringing you my must-stash players that you need to be adding before NFL free agency. And I understand we all play in different league settings. We all have different depth of benches, but today, like I said, I'm hoping that you get a stash that you can potentially go out there and add off the waiver wire or add in a trade to help bolster the end of your bench that can raise up in value as we approach the next few weeks. First player that I'm stashing right now, it's going to be Elijah Moore, who enters free agency. And it's really exciting for a guy like Elijah Moore, as a guy who I was super high on in the 2021 class. And when he came in the 2021 class, landing on the New York Jets, he had a great season. 12.6 fantasy points, was the wide receiver 28 on a fantasy points per game basis. And then what happened in year two? They drafted Garrett Wilson, and they had lackluster quarterback play before he got traded for the Cleveland Browns. So he had 5.5 fantasy points per game, 7.8 fantasy points per game, and then 7.1 fantasy points per game over the last 3 seasons. And let's be clear, that's not cutting it, but that's why he's making a stash video and not an absolute huge breakout video. I absolutely love me some Elijah Moore, thinking about some potential landing spots that a guy that is still only 24 years old, if he landed on a team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, if he landed on a team like the Kansas City Chiefs, like the Buffalo Bills, any team that has a good quarterback, because let's be clear, he's been playing with Zach Wilson, and then we thought he got a quarterback upgrade with Deshaun Watson, but that was not the case. I absolutely love Elijah Moore as a deep level stash. And when you look at him over on KTC, you're going to see that he's sliding in as the overall player 244, wide receiver 87. If I could play anywhere in a mid-third, that's kind of the range of price that I would be paying for Elijah Moore to get him on a stash, because I do believe his value will go shooting up depending on where he lands in free agency. I'm super excited. I think I've just been hyped for the overall ceiling that Elijah Moore could possess. Of course, he hasn't shown that the last 3 seasons, but going forward is a guy that I am targeting in all my Dynasty leagues. My next guy we're going to be talking about, it's going to be Diontae Johnson, wide receiver 117 on Keep Trade Cut, overall player 322. And what happened to Diontae Johnson? Can we just talk about how crazy this last season was? From a guy to go from Carolina to go to Baltimore, to go to Houston, to go to Baltimore. Like, this guy was passed around the NFL block like it was nobody's business. We don't know what happened with him at the Ravens. We don't know what happened with him at the Texans. I mean, there's a lot of people that are saying he was just kind of a locker room cancer. He was a locker room problem. But when we're talking about this guy over the last 2 seasons, it hasn't been the most ideal. 2024, only 67 targets, 87 targets in 2023. But if you look at even the game logs of this last season, I mean, he had 26 and 21 fantasy points in week 3 and 4, had 19 fantasy points in week 6. Like, he was producing decent level fantasy football value for us even this last season. The thing about Diontae Johnson that has always made me super hype is the way that he's able to command targets. I mean, as a sophomore in the NFL, had 144 targets, 169 targets, 147 targets. And I understand you can't always say, hey, targets sometimes, especially when he was playing with big noodled arm, Big Ben, they're not always super dependent, but he's been able to generate over 140 targets 3 times in his 6 career seasons. And this last year was just a weird year. And so Diontae Johnson's value has absolutely tumbled down the Keep Trade Cut rankings. So I will be definitely trying to go out and stash. He's cheaper than Elijah Moore. He's going to be, like we said, going to be signing somewhere this offseason. I'm excited for Diontae Johnson. I'm excited to see where he's going to end up. I understand there's a lot of risk that comes with Diontae Johnson, especially if you had Diontae Johnson, you got caught holding the bag. But if you can go acquire Diontae Johnson, or he's out there on the waiver wire, 100% go make sure that you are stashing some Diontae Johnson. Now, my third guy we're going to be talking about, his situation's a little bit different than these other two, where he's currently on a team, and a lot of people are saying that his running mate is going to be gone, and that is going to be Jordan Whittington for the Los Angeles Rams. And Jordan Whittington, 6th-round draft pick out of Texas this last year. We saw the preseason hype, the preseason buzz, but of course that didn't really accumulate to anything in the NFL, because we saw it was the Puka Nacua show, and we did see Cooper Kupp come back this last season, only put up 3.5 fantasy points per game, which put him over as the wide receiver 108 on a points per game basis. And now, like we said, we don't know where Cooper Kupp's going to end up. The Los Angeles Rams have talked and said that Cooper Kupp is most likely not going to be in the team's long-term future. We just saw Tutu Atwell sign a 1-year, $10 million contract. But Jordan Whittington, wide receiver 76, overall 212, and we've started to see his value rise just a little bit. He's gone up 5 wide receiver spots over the last 6 months. But really over the last few weeks, we've started to see that value start to go back up with the rumors that Cooper Kupp is no longer going to be a factor. Now, do I think that the Rams are going to go into the season with Jordan Whittington as their wide receiver 2? No, I don't. I think they'll address it in some other ways. But if you could ride this little bit of a value spike and either acquire Jordan Whittington and then trade him really quick, or like we said, you do end up getting him for somewhere like a middling third type value. But the part that I really liked about Jordan Whittington coming out just was his overall agility that he's able to show. Like I said, being a 6th-round pick, not that a ton of 6th-round picks have high-end football production, have high-end wide receiver points per game measurables in their career, but I do like some Jordan Whittington going forward as someone that could definitely go up in value. And I think when you're talking about some of these stashes, especially at the end of the bench, I want guys that have the potential to rise up in value that aren't just going to be roster cloggers, and Jordan Whittington is not going to be that. The next player I'm going to be talking about, it's going to be Evan Engram for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And Evan Engram just got released by the Jacksonville Jaguars. So right now in Jacksonville, I mean, it's been a Christian Kirk gone, Evan Engram gone. But Evan Engram, 30 years old still, tight end 21 on keep trade cut, overall player 180. And for those of us that play in a tight end premium league or just need some tight end help, Evan Engram has been super reliable over the last few seasons. I know last year only played in 9 games, was a little bit injured, but still put up tight end 12, 9.9 fantasy points per game numbers. But let's not forget the few years before that, 13.6, 10.4. He's been pretty consistent, middling, a wide tight end 4 to tight end 10. And I think Evan Engram, if he lands on a team like the Colts, or he could really land anywhere, and I think Evan Engram will be able to produce. I know a lot of people are going to say that there weren't a lot of other weapons. It was the Christian Kirk, Evan Engram show. Evan Engram, of course, was able to get the targets. Like in 2023, had 143 targets, and that's just because there wasn't a Brian Thomas Jr. playing next to him that season. But even still, last year, 9 games, had 64 targets. I still think Evan Engram has some juice left in the tank that I want to be taking advantage of. So make sure you're going out and making sure you have Evan Engram stashed, because that value has gone down. Tight end 21. He's over the age of 30, so people are worried about that overall age, but making sure that you have Evan Engram stashed on the end of your bench is going to be super, super important. The next and last and final stash before we get to kind of the rapid fire that we're going to be talking about, it's going to be Demario Douglas for the New England Patriots. And the Patriots have been in the rumors. They are looking for an alpha level wide receiver. They're looking for an A.J. Brown. They're looking for a DK Metcalf. And of course, you have that rising upside in a guy like Drake May. You're going to say to me, Caleb, this is heading into year 3 for Demario Douglas, 24 years old, wide receiver 68, overall player 186 on keep trade cut. Why am I telling you to stash some Douglas, especially after last year? I mean, we saw the improvement from 7.7 points per game up to 8.8. And you're going to say, if they add more mouths, how is that going to benefit a guy like Douglas? I just think Douglas as a talent, I know I just talked about how Jordan Whittington as a 6th-round drafted wide receiver, you don't see a lot of them show elite level fantasy football traits. The same could be true for a guy like Demario Douglas, who was drafted in the 6th round as well. But I think going forward, him in a wide receiver 2 role on an offense that is thriving, I don't think we've seen him in a thriving offense. We've seen him in some of the worst offenses in the NFL. And of course, you're going to say, well, there was lack of competition. He should have been able to produce. I understand all this. But when we're talking about a stash, a guy like a Douglas, you're going to say some of the metrics don't scream that this guy is totally improving. And I'm not calling Demario Douglas a great breakout candidate. I'm just saying that the hype that's going to start to happen with a young quarterback like Drake May at the helm, if they add somebody else, yes, you're going to say, well, maybe that'll reduce Demario Douglas's overall value. But that's also going to, a lot of people are going to say, well, that's going to open things up for a guy like Demario Douglas. I understand Javon Baker's been getting some hype in the news. Jalen Polk was super disappointing. Maybe we should stay away from all Patriots wide receivers. But at Demario Douglas's cost right now, over on KTC, I definitely want to be taking advantage of wide receiver 68. I think that's something that could be valuable at the end of your bench. So if you like Dynasty Fantasy Football, if you like winning, subscribe to the DLF channel. We are on the way to 20,000 subscribers. I am making content with the best team possible with Addison and Justin. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Ask us any questions down below, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.